Welcome to Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 5, Episode 14, presented by Market Dial. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
And we are back, Steve. We're back home after another great conference and round of interviews in Las Vegas, settling in with a bonanza of great content and interviews for the people, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's been content-a-looza or palooza or something like that. So yes, a lot of stuff in the can, as they say.
We have a plethora of content for the balance of the year and actually stretching into early next. In this episode, recorded live at Grocery Shop 2022 in Vegas 1.0, the first time we were in Vegas, Ivonne Kinser, VP Marketing and Innovation, Avocados From Mexico. Steve, why are we talking about avocados on the show?
Well, first of all, I love avocados. Second of all, I love the way Ivonne says guacamole.
Yeah, that's
but third, and probably most substantively really, is I think it's a pretty remarkable story. The branding and innovation around avocados as a category has been pretty brilliant, and I think it's a really interesting story of how to think about creating. Well, it's an interesting story, I guess, about a story, right? Because one of the things we talk about in being remarkable is not only to be different and unique, but to create a story that folks want to share. And I think what Ivonne and her team have done is pretty interesting.
Also, a shout out to the listeners that we continue to release for the first time ever. Bonus episodes of the show, all recorded live, all snack sized. They're about 15 minutes. The first one already out was with Deborah Weinswig, the great Deborah Weinswig, and released today. We're recording this on Friday. Christina Gustafsson, SVP Content from Grocery Shop, who gives us a bit of insight in the tradecraft of conferences and what make them great and what was great about the Grocery Shop event in Las Vegas. All right, now let's move on to the news of the week. Let's start with U.S. unemployment drops to 3.5%. I mean, it's really wild to watch these, and the same thing's happening in Canada. It's just unemployment continues to go down, not up, which is somewhat contrarian to an overall narrative of more difficult economic times.
Yeah, I was listening to CNBC this morning reporting this news, and again, it's Friday, so this just came out, and it's really kind of a perverse macroeconomic picture in a way. You know, when you think about low unemployment, you think, well, that's generally a pretty good thing, right? People aren't struggling as much, people have money to spend, but at the same time, part of what most people believe is driving inflation is the tight labor market. And there's a lot of concern, at least as we're starting to record this, the markets were down on this news because the belief is this means that the Federal Reserve is going to continue to raise interest rates and perhaps even raise them more aggressively than we were thinking just a couple of weeks ago. So it really clouds the inflation outlook, I think. So I think really the more we talked about this last week because we had an inkling that this might happen. Just really suggests that it's going to be tough to get inflation down. And the other thing that I guess is contributing a bit to the continuing worries about inflation is the Saudis pulling back on oil production.
Yep.
So we've seen a lot of progress on oil prices coming down. Now there's a suggestion that they're perhaps going to reverse course. So that's definitely concerning for the economy overall and retail in particular.
Let's move on to Christmas. Seems to be coming a bit early. Like certain retailers, like you walk in Costco and they're decorating for Christmas in August. But now we're actually seeing lots of movement early days.
It seems like for years the holiday shopping period just keeps moving earlier and earlier. I think a big part of what is driving the move. So Target actually just wrapping up this weekend, I believe, is their Deals Day. And then Amazon announced a second Prime Day, which is occurring the week that this episode is coming out. And there's just this general sense of trying to start earlier. And I think a lot of that has to do with worries about the economy in general, but in particular, the excess inventory levels that we've talked about a bunch. And I think we'll touch on in another story in a second. So yeah, I think it's going to be, I feel like I say this almost every year, but I think this is actually going to be the most promotional holiday season in a really long time.
Let's talk about different things around Target. You mentioned Target. They've got a new CPO. What's going on there?
Yeah, they're bringing in this guy from Kaiser Permanente. I always say that incorrectly. So
is that from the Kaiser Sose School of?
It is not Kaiser Sose. No, that is the healthcare company, I believe.
Oh.
He's actually got quite a lot of experience. I believe Home Depot earlier in his career, maybe eBay. I think number one, it's interesting to bring in. The reason I wanted to talk about this story, one is I think it's interesting for a brand like Target, which has been so advanced in many cases in terms of driving digital innovation, to bring in somebody from the outside. And I loved a quote that he had in the story announcing his appointment, that digital is a team sport. And he talked a lot about breaking down silos and, all the stuff that we've been talking about for years. So it'll be interesting to see, given how much Target has really created this hybrid strategy to begin with, to see where that goes. So watch this space.
Some good news in the wobbly unicorn section, so we're not going to do that again this week. We've got Poshmark. They got acquired.
Yeah, I don't know how to. I guess that's positive. So Poshmark is one of these wobbly unicorns. They in the resale space, they've been growing quite a lot, but also hemorrhaging cash for the most part. They got acquired by I'm not sure how you say it exactly, Naver. That is the kind of the Korean Google. So the fit there, I think, is a little bit interesting, or perhaps lack of fit. But yeah, Poshmark, I think is, I think we've talked about this before as well. I think because of the revenue strength in a lot of these disruptor brands, but the lack of profitability and the decreased valuations, I do think we're going to continue to see a fair amount of consolidation. So, I don't think this will be the first pretty sizable deal for some of these disruptor brands that we see unfold in the next few months. But I think it's about a $1.8 billion valuation. So that's certainly good news for the investors, even though that's below where they were when they initially went public.
And we got a little more news. I guess how much more news is there to come from Peloton? They're laying off, what was it, 500 people. I don't know how many people are going to be left at Peloton. I mean, what's left?
The last one there, turn out the lights, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, we were talking off mic about, it's hard to think about a brand that has screwed things up more in the last
with so much potential, right? With
I mean, I think they I mean, it's not like they were the first exercise equipment ever to be in the world, but they certainly created quite a splash in terms of their branding and product and integrated business model, and just kind of all those things that are kind of characteristic of the digital age. And yet they just created, they expanded way too quickly, obviously, and that's just created this huge effect. So yeah, we're seeing continuing reduction in workforce. They apparently are about to announce a bunch more of their physical retail stores that are going to close. And then, as we've touched on the last few weeks, they're creating these new wholesale partnerships. So yet another brand taking the D out of the DTC.
Well, that's a great segue. A little bit of flash news from Allbirds. They're going to REI, so doing the same thing writ large, right?
Yeah, yet another move here. I mean, I think Allbirds, they went public about a year ago now at a very high valuation. That valuation has collapsed, and they continue to open their own stores. When I was down in New Zealand, I saw their beautiful new store in Auckland. Looks great. I don't know if it's doing any business, but it looks fantastic. And now another wholesale partnership with an established retailer. So going to REI gets them in more than 100 locations, I believe.
Soon we're going to be talking about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but it's with all these early sales, we start to think about the efficacy of these two holidays. REI announced they are permanently opting out of Black Friday. I guess they're going to close the head offices and close the stores. I suppose the servers will still be running. Somebody will be keeping the lights on from that perspective. But do you think this is a trend? I mean, as these things become each and every day earlier and earlier, does it take the wind out of the sails of Black Friday and Cyber Monday?
Well, I think Black Friday and Cyber Monday are going to continue to be very large volume days. I do, and I've talked about this for years. I think there's a lot of hype around those 2 days that's really out of proportion with the contribution. But I think the challenge for retailers is if you don't participate, you potentially leave a lot of money on the table. So I don't expect that the biggest retailers are going to really change their strategies fundamentally. I think what they're going to experience is that the sales get spread out over a longer period of time than they have historically. I think in the case of REI, which has a more kind of purpose-driven mission and is not such a big player and, is not a gift category per se, it's a little easier for them to make that decision. I think it's great personally, but I think it's a real strong signal to your customers as well as even more importantly your associates.
Something good to say about Macy's, which is kind of unique for us. We don't often speak of Macy's in good terms, but they seem to be for whatever reason, they seem to be in a better inventory situation than their peers. Now, I say for whatever reason, but lots of commentary around just more focus on planning and just recognizing that eventually the song was going to stop and people are going to go back to normal lives and stop buying so much stuff post-COVID. Is that your assessment of how they got to where they are?
Yeah, well, the story in the Wall Street Journal was that not only reporting that Macy's inventory was only up about 7% compared to a bunch of folks, we've talked about before, Kohl's, Nike, TJ Maxx, that up 30, 40, 50%. So big difference in terms of their inventory position going into the fourth quarter. The story talked about both how they were using some of their credit card data and other analytics that kind of signaled to them earlier that sales were decelerating. And I guess in general, their philosophy was to buy, more tightly than some other players. I still, we keep coming back to this. I'm still I believe that's true. I don't believe that some of the other companies we're talking about are necessarily in a much worse situation analytically than Macy's is. So there's still, I think, a little bit more to this story. But absolutely Macy's is not going to feel the level of desperation perhaps than some of their other competitors will. I still think, one of the things, and this is a little bit inside baseball, but we don't really know. We know that a lot of retailers have been attempting to cancel orders. So we don't really know how successful they will be until we see the next quarter's reports. But if you can't cancel orders and your sales aren't strong, you're going to continue to have significant inventory issues going into next year. How that will actually pan out, I don't know. In Macy's case, it looks like their inventory is much more in line with how their revenues are likely to turn out. So that will probably mean their margin performance is better than their peers.
Let's talk about Amazon to bring us home. A couple of 3 points of interest. One is they're pausing hiring, but that's more at the corporate level. They're hiring staff, and then they put the fork into a cute little robot.
Yeah, so they're basically got a hiring freeze for their retail operations, and I think this is just part of seeing both a general slowdown in retail for Amazon, and there definitely seems to be a push on the part of the new leadership team there, Andrew Jassy and some of the new folks over retail to improve profitability. The addition of all these seasonal workers, of course, there's a huge spike in demand during the holiday season. So I think that's pretty typical kind of performance. We've seen the same kind of reports from Target and Walmart. So, that's also good for the job market, I suppose. But, again, may put more pressure on inflation. And then the other piece of news you mentioned is Amazon is part of their very aggressive test and learn program. We're experimenting with these, what's it called? Scout? Their little delivery robots, and
cute little sidewalk things.
Very cute, zipping around your neighborhood, delivering products. But apparently, ultimately, that's not the direction they want to go in. So they are shutting that down and laying off quite a few people, or eliminating jobs. Maybe many of those people will get jobs elsewhere at Amazon. I don't think that was clear from the story.
Yeah, I mean, my interpretation of that last part was, Amazon at any given time is looking for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. So maybe just reallocation versus laying those folks off. But anyway, I'm sure that'll sort out. There's lots of capacity to absorb smart people out of Amazon anywhere in the business. All right, well, that wraps up our news segment. Now, just before we get to our great interview with Ivonne Kinser, VP Marketing Innovation from Avocados from Mexico, let's hear from our sponsor. MarketDial is an easy-to-use testing platform and emboldens great decisions, leading to reliable, scalable results. With MarketDial, you can be confident in the outcome of your in-store pilot initiatives before rolling them out across your fleet. In a challenging retail climate of supply chain disruption, labor shortages, and dynamic customer behavior, the need for reliable insights has never been greater. Validate your remarkable ideas with MarketDial's in-store testing solution. The proof is in the testing. Learn more at marketdial.com. That's marketdial.com.
Well, Michael, it's finally happened. We are nearly 100 episodes in, and we're finally talking about one of my favorite topics in the world, avocados. And we've got the perfect person with us, Ivonne Kinser. Now, you're the VP of Marketing and Innovation, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Congratulations
on your 100 episode.
Thanks.
Thank you for the invite. What an honor.
Well, we're delighted to have you here, and maybe we could just start out by having you, we've known each other, we were just talking before we started. I've known you for a while. We both live in Dallas. I haven't seen you in person in ages, so this is a thrill as well. But tell us a little bit about Avocados from Mexico, your personal and professional journey, and just in general get to know you a little bit better before we jump in.
Sure. So, I came to the U.S. in 2001, and I actually moved here 1 week before September 11, and I spent half of my career here working for multi-billion-dollar global brands. When you're starting, I think you don't know what you don't know, and
sure.
And you're not sure what you want. So, but it's very attractive also. The multi-billion-dollar brands and the names, etc. So I spent half of my career here working for IPG group of companies, McCann Erickson on American Airlines account. Then on the agency side, you always have the opportunity to work for multiple categories from retail, manufacturers, CPG, etc. So halfway through my career, I realized I am really a transformational leader. I love transformation and innovation. So I kind of moved towards startups and technology companies and companies that were inventing or reinventing themselves. So to make a long story short, I ended up in Avocados from Mexico 8 years ago. And it was a completely new organization. Actually, that was before the brand went into its first Super Bowl. So it was pretty much an unknown brand.
Yeah.
So much that when the recruiter reached out to me and asked me if I was interested in going for an interview with Avocados from Mexico, I asked, what's that?
Yeah.
So,
well, at one level, it's easy to understand, right?
Right.
Avocados from Mexico.
Exactly.
There's a little bit more to it than
exactly.
that. Right?
Yeah. And it's kind of one of the most rewarding experiences in my career because I was hired to build from the ground up the digital marketing department. And it turned out that today is one of the most, I will say, forward-thinking, definitely in the fresh produce industry, but also at the level of the sophisticated CPG brands.
Yeah. And so how did the whole idea of branding avocados in that way even come about? And how did you get started with that whole thought process?
Yeah, that's a great story because actually I always say we're not even supposed to be a brand. We're a commodity and a fresh product. But our CEO comes from the CPG category, from Mission Food. So he has that brand building mentality and training. And he saw the opportunity to build a brand. And there's a lot of, I think, nuances of the origin of avocados and being Mexico as a brand, something that evokes a lot of positive emotions. So we saw the opportunity to build a brand, and this organization was created about 8-9 years ago with that purpose, build a brand in the U.S. and increase the demands of avocados from Mexico in the U.S. And I said, emphasize the U.S. because we're a part of a checkoff program of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And so we only market in the U.S. We we joke that we say we're not from Mexico and we don't sell avocados. We're a marketing company in Dallas, Texas, that has the mission of building that brand and increase demand.
Can you give us a little sense of, you mentioned, thinking of avocados as a commodity, and I realize it didn't all happen overnight, but to go to having advertising on the Super Bowl, like that's such a major investment. How did you get your head around how much money to spend, how to think about the return on investment? It just seems like a really bold move to make.
You're right. And a lot of people ask, how come a small brand is going to spend that portion of its budget in a campaign like Super Bowl, for example? And, the answer is that it was actually a very, very strategic decision. First of all, Avocados from Mexico hold 90% of the market share, but sometimes hold 100% of the market share because Mexico, and especially Michoacan, Mexico, is the only place where avocados are available all year round with that volume. That is a volume enough to feed the appetite of America. And during the Super Bowl, which is the time of highest consumption, we are pretty much by ourselves in the market. And when you think about it, the products that are in front of the TV viewers, when they have the Super Bowl commercials in front of them, there are very few. You have chips, you have sodas, you have beer, you have guacamole. That guacamole is unbranded, but it's ours. It's from Mexico. So it was a decision of, do we brand that product in the highest advertising stage, or we miss that opportunity? So for us, it was very strategic, and it has huge payoff. But interestingly, we look at the TV spot as an excuse to launch a much bigger campaign in digital and PR that lasts for a month. Think about it. The TV spot is 30 seconds, but the digital campaigns that are very iconic for us, especially Super Bowl digital campaigns, last a month and deliver billions of impressions. So it's the whole the whole strategy around PR, TV, and digital will really have moved the needle for us, and we have doubled the imports of avocados from Mexico in only 8 years, and increased brand preference from 20% to 60%. So that's pretty amazing.
That is great, yeah.
Wow, I mean, there's a lot of lessons there, a lot of things that follow up. And I suppose as well, you're fighting for share of stomach or share of snack, right? If you've got that percentage of category ownership, it's really getting them to choose guacamole. I love the way you say guacamole. So say that again for me, by the way.
Guacamole.
Oh, I love that. Versus another, salsa or another option, right? So there's a bit of that. But let's go back a step. So just so I and the audience understand clearly, your organization, because I meet people who represent banana growers, and they represent all growers, but you're a brand separate. So you're, would you describe yourself as a marketing group and an advocacy group?
So we represent growers, actually, and importers and distributors. These two organizations, the organization of growers of Mexican avocados in Michoacan, Mexico, and the organization of importers, packers, and distributors of avocados in the U.S., they came together for first time in history to form this checkoff program of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So we do represent them, but we don't manage directly the sales or sales data.
Right. So each individual organization, wholesaler, importer, does their own business with the retailers, but you are the umbrella, so to speak, above all that.
Exactly. And our board of directors is comprised by half of the growers and half of the packers.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So let's talk about some lessons learned. Like, when you think and reflect on this tremendous success, I guess part of that is getting people to think, walking down that consider this, remember it when you go to grab a snack. But the structure that you put in place, what lessons do you think are there for other fruits and other products in general that, you would say share on on the podcast with them and say, listen, here's the 3 things, if you're going to be successful as us, that you need to have in place?
Yeah, I'm going to start with a story, and it's going to illustrate my point. But when I went for that interview with Avocados From Mexico, and you knew me from the fashion industry, right? That's what I was coming from. But then I went to this interview with Avocados From Mexico, and I asked the CEO, why are you interested in me? Because I have no experience whatsoever in this category. I come from completely different industry.
Did you like avocados, though? Were you an avocado fan?
That's one thing that I
Okay,
that
so you
I
had
knew
that
how
going
to do.
for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew how
You
to
had
eat
that going for you.
avocados.
And the way you say guacamole.
Guacamole.
You make
a huge advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
Right away.
Right away.
It's like when I sit in front of banking, if I ever sat in front of bankers for a job, so it looks like I have a bank account or I shop or I eat. Okay,
Exactly.
So get you to the starting gate.
Exactly. That was something. That was something to start. And he said, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone with a very good understanding of the digital ecosystem but no experience in the category, so they can help me build what nobody else is doing. And that became the foundation of what we do in Avocados From Mexico. Is innovated. It's just marketing for products as a CPG, which was completely disrupting all the preconceived notions in the industry. So to your point, what are the learnings? I have reflected on this a lot through the past years, because remember in the past, actually when we came out of college, it was you were supposed to build your career in one vertical, in one category. So people that have spent a lot of years in beauty or a lot of years in whatever industry is it. But as things have evolved and everything moves so fast, I think that learning agility is a lot more important today than what is that experience, because that learning agility, which, by the way, is a thing. I mean, I have been researching about it, and it's a very strong skill comprised by multiple other skills, is what allows you to kind of cross-pollinate ideas from one industry to the other one. And when our CEO created the Avocados From Mexico marketing, you see, our experiences are from multiple diverse industries, from CPG to mine, like fashion, telecommunications, and that really helps bring some ingenuity and creativity that allows the companies to reinvent or invent themselves in a way that they become pioneers. And that just put you in a very privileged position to break through and break the barriers and the paradigms and everything that it was supposed to be. So I think that was one of the most important learnings that I have had.
Interesting. As we reflect back a couple of years into where we are today, this quasi-post-COVID world, I mean, the supply chains, there must have been a tremendous amount of energy around moving product and challenges. And talk about your experience during the COVID era and how you overcame whatever challenges. I guess in one day it was good days, people were at home snacking, but in the other side,
I ate more guacamole.
I learned to make. I mastered. But on the other hand, food service just dissipated. I mean, that had to be a huge demand drop. And so talk a little bit about how you got through that.
Absolutely. So everything that you say, that we went through all that. However, on the retail side, so people were eating more at home. So in that regards, it benefit us. But as a marketing company, we had a huge disruption. We were ready, I remember, to launch our Cinco de Mayo campaign when things start closing down, we were start listening what's going on here and how serious it was. And it happens to be that our Cinco de Mayo TV spot, the context was a hospital, and I was people in the hospital celebrating Cinco de Mayo.
Just coincidentally.
Coincidentally.
Yeah.
Because we have shoot that commercial like month before, we didn't know, and then obviously that was not longer appropriate. We have to imagine that a brand like us with limited budget just like throw away a TV production. And
at least for a couple of years anyway. I mean, you can kind of warehouse it, I suppose, right?
We never, I mean, it's gone. I think that we never used it again because things change and it lost relevancy. But Then there was 10 days before Cinco de Mayo, which is our second largest occasion of the year after the Super Bowl. I said, what do we do? And the good thing and the big advantage that we have is the agility, because we have a small team, move extremely fast. We built from ideation to launch a digital campaign for Cinco de Mayo in 10 days.
Wow.
And it became the most successful digital campaign ever, because we tap into the current situation was people at home. So the campaign was homemade guacamole. And we invited people to just go with their families and create their own wax. And we had sweepstakes and interactions with consumers. So pivoting so quickly that only a small organization can do really make us deliver our most successful campaign ever. So, we turn a really bad situation into a good marketing opportunity.
I think it's an interesting point, just even going back to what you said a few minutes ago. It strikes me, and we talk about this on the podcast, and I talk about this with clients and when I speak sometimes, is that, what got you here, what made you successful in the past, whether that's an organization or yourself personally, may not serve you well in the future, because you can't see problems in a different way, in a different environment. So sometimes I think when you're forced to do something quickly, you're like, well, we can't do it the way we've always done it, so we're just going to have to come up with a different way of doing it. And you see things that you may not see, or you might have talked yourself out of if you had more time to plan. So I think that's just an interesting point. So we're here at Grocery Shop recording this. Have you seen, I know you haven't been here and it's early in the conference, have you seen anything interesting, or is there something in particular you're really hoping to get out of your time here in Las Vegas?
Yeah, so I love coming to these type of shows and CES and these large shows, Grocery Shop, Talk Shop. What I do, even though I just came here yesterday, is I listen to the chatter. I read signs. I read headlines. I talk to people and try to kind of gather the patterns of what is going on. And what I'm seeing in the short time that I have been here is a lot of omni-channel conversations, personalization. I think that omni-channel just became, we have repeated that word so much that we kind of lost the perspective.
We were talking about that last night at dinner, it's not 15 years in now or whatever, omni-channel, yeah.
But it's kind of a different meaning right now when I look at what is going on. It's more like, the way I look at it is more channel agnostic.
Right.
So we have to stop thinking about channels and planning about channels and budget for channels. And we need to follow the consumer wherever they are. And the consumers just go across channels seamlessly. So that is becoming the lines that separate one channel to the other one blurry. And that is what I perceive as a omni-channel right now. Then you see a lot of personalization, you see a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms. But when you look at everything together, you see that the trends kind of intertwine to support each other. For example, personalization. You can do personalization today because you have the technology capabilities of machine learning and artificial intelligence that helps you to identify consumer preferences, preferred channels. So it's just planning to put in front of the consumer that shoppable opportunity wherever the consumer is, channel agnostic. I think that's a lot of what I'm seeing is that combination of trends, but all go to personalization, convenience, and just putting your product in the consumer fingertips, whatever they are.
Just maybe one quick follow-up on that. For a brand or group like yours, how do you personalize things? You don't have a lot of individualized customer data, right?
So we have, again, don't underestimate our sophistication. We actually started building our first-party data in 2016. It has been, first-party data is expensive and difficult. But what we are doing is partnering with partners with LiveRamp, for example, to identify individual consumers and wherever they want and just target them in a one-on-one basis. We partner with e-commerce accelerators like Micmac, for example, that they also have a partnership with LiveRamp, and they have their consumers well identified and the shoppers based on their preferences, their demographics, etc. So is that personalization, to your point, it's true, I was just giving you a hard time, but we don't have the hard data or the personal identifiable information.
Right.
But we can personalize by preferences.
Right. It's
and
more,
by
it makes
habits.
it much more relevant. It's
Exactly.
not literally one-to-one, but enough that it gives you that edge.
Exactly.
And standing out. Interesting.
It's the last question for you. What's next? I mean, the food service grocery business is it's been disrupted with more people eating at home. People, I think, have learned, you mentioned how to make great guacamole at home. I mean, then people are like, oh, great, I can make this at home. Maybe I don't have to go out. How are you thinking about that? Where do influencers, live streaming? I mean, there's so many levers to pull. What's next for the organization? What you're working on?
So a lot of that you mentioned, or all of the above. I think that one thing that is very clear ahead of us is something that I have been pushing through the organization and is crystallizing, which is a brand performance approach. In the past, typically companies had a brand budget and a performance budget, and brand advertising, performance advertising. So for over a year, we have been building this brand performance approach, how we approach it, how we measure it, and finally we just launched that. What it means is that we want that each dollar that we put out there for marketing drive brand and performance. So what we're doing right now is pre-testing every campaign for brand metrics and performance metrics, and then tweaking accordingly to what we learn. But I think that's the future. The future of everything is just the walls are falling apart and everything is more flat and more seamless. And that's how the consumers navigate. They are being entertained and then they shop. They are shopping and then they are entertained. And you see also that in the retail platforms, how they are integrating storytelling type of formats, because it's all about creating that full experience of inspiration all the way to purchase in one seamless journey.
Right. And just trying to understand it through marketing mix modeling and all those kind of sophisticated tools to tie those things together.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for joining us here in the podcast studio at Grocery Shop. It was a real treat to listen. I'm a big fan of your product, in general, and love me a good guacamole. So, I had a personal interest in learning more about it. And thanks for sharing here on the Remarkable Retail Podcast. A real treat to meet you.
Thank you for the invite. I thank you for the opportunity to say guacamole at least 10 times.
Okay, what's the secret to a good guacamole?
Lime. I love lime.
There you have it. See, there's so much valuable information you get from this podcast. It's unbelievable.
That's probably the best piece of information I gave you today.
Fantastic. Great limes from Mexico. I love my limes from Mexico. Well, thanks again for joining us. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
If you like what you heard, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform, so you can catch up with all our great interviews, like our discussion with Seth Godin on what retailers can actually do to fight climate change. New episodes of Season 5, presented by Marketal, will show up each and every week. And be sure and tell your friends and colleagues in the retail industry all about us.
And I'm Steve Dennis, author of the best-selling book, Remarkable Retail, How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at stephenpdennis.com.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant, keynote speaker, and producer and host of a series of retail trade podcasts, including this one, plus the host of the popular YouTube cooking show Last Request Barbecue. You can learn even more about me on LinkedIn or meleblanc.co. Safe travels, everyone.